In his first hours as president, Mr. Trump worked to undo many of the policies set forth by his predecessor. We welcome Professor Melinda Jackson of San Jose State to explore the effects. Thanks for being with us, Professor.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with immigration. We've talked about how many legal scholars, even those who are conservative, say they don't think revoking birthright citizenship is possible. Of everything else that Mr. Trump has laid out, what do you think will have the most impact here in the United States?
Well, certainly the actions on immigration, in addition to trying to end birthright citizenship, which I agree is going to be a legal challenge. It is enshrined in the Constitution, so that one's going to be tough. But also declaring the national emergency on the southern border and saying that he's planning to send troops to enforce border control. Deportations have been promised. Again, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So a number of actions on immigration, which again was one of the main issues that he did campaign on. So we're seeing some very swift action on that. That's certainly going to affect many people here in the U.S., including many immigrants here in California. So that's certainly very significant. In addition, the actions on energy policy, we are dealing with the fires here in LA and ongoing impacts of extreme weather that has been linked to climate change. So, energy policies, as well as the promise of tariffs starting perhaps as early as February 1st. It was certainly an active first day. And I think that was a lot of the point was for Trump to really show that he meant what he said. And he is embarking on a very ambitious policy agenda from day one.
Enacting the promises he campaigned and won on. Let's go back to the environment. And he used the phrase drill, baby, drill, which I hadn't heard in years. What do you think the second term means for the environment, oil and gas drilling here in the States?
Right. Well, the executive order is meant to loosen the regulations, and that was really another theme throughout the orders that he signed yesterday was to reduce government regulation in many areas and to make it easier for business, really, and in this case, the fuel industry, oil and gas, to increase production. The fact is, the U.S. already is the highest producer at this point in the world, so. But it's clearly it's a political issue where for many years we've seen this conflict between environmental interests advocating in favor of protecting the environment and increasing regulations and business interests pushing back and wanting to deregulate.
Can we talk a little bit about some very specific language that the president used in his inaugural address yesterday? He said that two genders will be recognized, male and female. It seemed very, very specific. There's been a lot of talk about rolling back DEI policies, of course, the battle over what's taught in schools. Do you know, why do you think he went so specific on that issue?
Right. So what he said exactly is that the federal government will recognize two genders. So he wasn't targeting any specific policies or programs, but by saying that in the eyes of the U.S. government, only male and female gender will exist, obviously that has the potential to impact many, again, rules, regulations, options for example, gender options when you are getting a U.S. passport. Mm-hmm. Of course, protections against discrimination based on gender is probably the main concern that we don't know yet exactly how that statement will play out in terms of those more specific policies and protections for transgender people, for example.
And finally, Professor, is there anything that you're keeping an eye out for that hasn't been in the headlines?
Well, it's interesting because many people told us after the election that their main, before and after the election, actually, that their main concern was the economy and jobs. And we didn't hear a lot about that aside from the tariffs. So some of those issues that Trump campaigned on, for example, no more taxes on tips, keeping grocery prices down, these really pocketbook issues that many voters were very and are very concerned about. We didn't hear much about that. So the kind of culture war issues, these things that grab the headlines, I think were very much in the spotlight yesterday. most American voters are really caring about how this is going to impact their daily lives and their wallets. And so I'm curious to see what we're going to hear about economic policy going forward.
All right. It's a good point. Professor Melinda Jackson from San Jose State. I'm glad we had you on again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course. Coming up here on the 9.